traditional greeting. You might get this if you meet the people, sometimes not. Nitaka yapi, ila tayo wachianke, ya tayo, ya hipi, Barbara imachia pi pilamaya. And I said, welcome, it's a great day, and I'm glad we're all here together, our relatives as relatives. And my name is Barbara, and thank you for coming. I ended up here, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is Welcome to the Land of the CCWYouth, Lakota Oyate, the Burnt Thigh Nation, and that's one of the signs that you may or may not see when you go there. And Burnt Thigh comes from a legendary event where I believe the tribe was running through a prairie, it was on fire, and they got out, but their thighs were burnt. And so it was such an important event that they became known as the burnt thigh. And the French called them the brûlés, which means burnt. So, and they're also called Rosebud. So Rosebud, CCWYouth, Oyate, Brûlé, all those names apply to this particular group of people. Okay, pointer, talking, walking and talking at the same time. So here's where you are going, is right down here in South Dakota. Right across the border, here's the Niobrara River where the tubing is, just in case you don't know. This is east of Pine Ridge. Over here, what you have are the Black Hills. They'll become important. And today, all the red parts are reservations, Sioux reservations out in South Dakota. Each particular group, so you're closest to Pine Ridge, and you're southeast of the Badlands, and Pine Ridge is southwest. And then Cheyenne River and Standing Rock, etc. So this is where you're going to be. Okay, I went out there to learn about the Lakota, and this is where I stayed. And we didn't have a shower. So, you guys, and I was older, you know, and I needed my shower because I usually got pretty sore after a day. So I was in one of the tents back here that I didn't stake the first night, so the wind picked me up and rolled me along the prairie. And I got the name Whirlwind Woman from Whirlwind Woman, which was a joke. What I did out there was cultural. I did not really go out there to work. I went out to learn about the Lakota, to learn a lot of culture and a lot of education in that way. And so we were staying in the backyard of this man. His name was Albert Whitehat. Albert just recently passed. The two elders that taught me out there are no longer there, but I'm sure you are going to learn, you're going to be introduced to those people who are the cultural holders of the Lakota culture out there. At least one night I see you have a cultural presentation. I'm not sure if you have any more than that. And Albert became the authority on the Lakota language, wrote a book called Reading and Writing Lakota, taught at a university there, was a man who really held the people together. He was, he thought that both tribal members and non-tribal members and people from the outside ought to learn together so that they could start looking at the world with a different mind and a different heart, with the way he put it. And that touched me, because the first thing he said was, put away your watches. And in this day and age, cell phones, tablets, whatever, get rid of them, because we're not going to be on that time. We are going to be doing a different time. That is not to say that there's not computers and things like that, but the traditional way of being does not allow for that in many ways. So another heart, and we wanted another heart and another mind. And the second man is this man, Don Moccasin, and this is me being taught how to dance at a powwow. But Don Moccasin also was our education man. He's the one that taught us about the traditions, the ceremonies, how to put up a teepee, which we could not do. After an hour and a half, and 2 Indian women put it up in 15 minutes. But it fell down, he made it fall down, and he said, put it up. You know, and so that kind of thing is what I did when I was out there. He wasn't active. He took it upon himself to start taping all the elders. And so when he was starting to tape all the elders, they were still alive from the beginning of the 20th century. So they were the holders of the time when the free roaming Sioux went on to reservations, and they were the first little generation of those reservation people. So they held a lot of knowledge, and they taught a lot of knowledge. So he had this vast tape system, and it's now in a university, CCWYouth University, which is on Rosebud, named for Spotted Tail, one of their most revered leaders. I don't know if you'll get to see that, but he wanted to strengthen the family structure of the Lakota by teaching the kids about their traditions. So he was an important man in my understanding of the Lakota. And now I looked up the Tree of Life because I always want to know, you know, who are these people? Because there are some people who come to the reservation, honestly, I have to say, and they swoop in and they swoop out, and they don't really do anything. And this group has been there for a while, and they're a relief agency, and they don't want to be converting people, and yet they're Methodist, and yes, they do have that call to show that heart of Christianity, but they're there to help, and they're there to develop the help over time, and that is what all reservations need. They need that developing of help over time. And then if I go to my more radical side, and they need the government to get the heck out of there and stop treating Indian folks as dependent nations. And that's part of what modern Indians who are lawyers are facing today. They're going to court trying to get their sovereignty back, their ability to make their decisions. Had that probably happened in the beginning, we would not be having an Indian problem still. That's a whole history that I kind of can't get into. But Changleshka Richoni, which is the Lakota way of saying the spotted tree of life. And it comes from both the Bible and from Black Elk. He had a vision that the world was going to come together in 7 generations. And it would be all nations coming together around in a circle in the tree of life and going back to understanding the things that are important to all humanity, no matter who you are. So I like the fact that they call themselves the tree of life, because that's really important. Leah gave me a whole bunch of questions, and I am not going to be able to answer these questions in a very detailed way, but what I've done is, on that sheet, we don't really need it for this presentation, but when you're done, if you are interested, more interested in like the history, I put the questions, then I've got some places that you can go. I've put some information on here. I've done a lot of YouTubing, especially with Albert Whitehat. He talks a lot on YouTube. Another man is James Marshall. So those YouTubes are actual Lakota people who are important, talking about the people and what they still believe and what is important to them. So that's what I did with that. Here's a basic outline. Here we are. The Lakota wandered in this whole area, in Wyoming into Colorado, down into Kansas, and they were kind of left alone for a long, long time. In 1849, gold was discovered, and it began this trickle of people coming across the Oregon Trail. There were immigrants coming across that trail, but there was kind of live and let live, and there was no real problems until about 1855, and then a Lakota person killed a cow that was coming across with some immigrants. And the immigrants were upset, and Lakota tried to make amends for that by giving them a horse or whatever it was. And these people said, that's not going to satisfy us. We want the guy who did it so we can prosecute. And the Lakota said, no, that's not what we do. You know, we're not going to give up our brother to you for a dumb sick cow, which apparently the cow actually was there. And it had wandered away, so, you know, it was one of those things. And so what happened was an army group came out, demanded the guy, the leader of that Lakota group, you know, went and talked with them and said, look, you know, let's try to work this out. Let's not have some problems here. And that army man opened fire and killed a lot of people in the community. And it's called the Grattan Affair, and it began, it's sort of the Mormon cow incident. And so that starts, then there's a retaliation by the Lakota, and it starts the beginnings of the Plains Wars are in the 1800s. Meantime, we've got the Oregon Trail, and more people are coming across it, and then the Army is becoming across it as well, because they want to put forts along the way to protect the people coming across, and then there's a lot of talking and a few treaties, and okay, you know, the people are just going to come through. They're going to leave you alone. They're just going to come through. They're going to Wyoming. They're going to later on the Bosman Trail, but they're going through your country. They're really not going to go through, which isn't actually what happened, but initially that was true. So there was still peace, and then there was fighting periodically, and different groups were fighting periodically. And one of the big mistakes of history that the Indians talk about a lot is that one group was misidentified with another group. So that, like the Brule, for example, who traditionally, after a while, because of Spotted Tail, really didn't want to get involved in fighting at all, and kept pulling themselves out, were attacked as frequently as anybody else because they were Indians. That Indians are all alike. There was no differentiation of groups of Indians at all. So this was the beginning of the Indians Plains Wars that we mostly know about, because those were the last wars with the and magnificent warriors with their headdresses on the horses and all that kind of stuff. And so that's basically what happened. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about part of that history, how they get our reservations a little bit later. But that's basically when it starts, and then basically the Army becomes involved in what are we going to do about these people. And then there's a series of things, and we will talk about those. So just if you want to see where the Oregon Trail was, see how it comes through Nebraska, and then goes up through Wyoming. And today, if you drive out, what is it, 80?
Yeah.
Interstate 80 is the Oregon Trail. You can actually get off at one stop and see the ruts still from the wagons. It's on the other side. Can you see it on this side? I can't remember. Anyway, it's more towards Colorado, and you just get off. It says Oregon Trail. And, you know, you get off and you walk out a little in the grass, and you see the ruts there, which is, to me, truly amazing. And it goes up way into obviously into Oregon. And that was laid in by fur trappers. Fur trappers do come out onto the plains, and they interact with the Plains Indians, bringing metal pots, which women absolutely loved and wanted their husbands to go get because it was easier to cook. And they came out for buffalo furs, and the traders came out for buffalo furs, and they brought beads. Beads were a valued trade item. So the fur traders came out there, and then a number of fur traders began to intermarry with the Plains tribes. We went to a fur trade museum and a fur trade house where the Brule used to camp, across the road. It's now still totally open prairie, but the lady said, imagine that there's like 300 teepees out there, because the people would come and camp by the trader and then do their trading and then go off and get some more stuff. So it's kind of interesting to go out there. The trail passes away as soon as the railroad comes in. And the railroad comes in right after the Civil War. So, yeah, during and after the Civil War. So then, I just wanted to give you historically just some looks at Rosebud in the past. There it is. Actually, in some ways, it still looks like this. It's like you can have some houses, and then there'd be these rolling hills and stuff. But this is the agency, and this isn't there anymore. And you can see that we've got some people living. We've got some people living down here in teepees and over there, and then you've got the Indian agent and things like that. This is in 1889, and here's a man painting of what is called a winter count, and it is the written history of the Lakota, and each winter they decided, what was the most important event of that year that we remember, that we will remember, and then that will make us understand, what happened in that year. And so I can't see any on there, but a lot of them have bodies laying down with smallpox on them, as part of these winter counts. I see. I'm not sure if these are army people or missionary people. It's hard to tell because it's not close, but a lot of winter counts. Each group, each Oyate, which is a family group, a nation, had some kind of winter count. These pictures were taken by a man who watched the Lakota go from free-ranging life to reservation life. And so he documented a lot of this. This is a giveaway. I don't know if you'll see one of these. They often take place at powwows, and I don't know if there'll be a powwow out there. If there is, they may take you to it. A giveaway is when a family decides, for a number of reasons, they name their child, they've had good fortune, someone has danced the sun dance and now gives back to the community. So they gather all kinds of goods and they give them away to celebrate something. And in the old days, birthdays weren't celebrated, but a name given might be. But you didn't give them presents; they gave you presents. So, and it was a way to redistribute bounty as well. Today they still do that. Some powwows have them, some don't. I was gifted with 4 plates at one because they had named their baby. This one is in 1897. This one says that it was often held in memory of a member of the family who died. Over time, some of these cultural traditions have changed their focus. They are done for different reasons today than they would have been in the past, depending on modern life, I think. This is a very interesting picture. These are women who live together their entire lives. The Lakota have a tradition in which homosexuality is accepted and revered, and it is not abnormal at all. Today on the reservation, that is not true. There's a lot of gay baiting on reservations, so it's a complete turnaround of traditional mores in cultures. Here's a teepee that somebody painted. Generally, this wasn't done, but again, this might be a family history. This might be something, and like I said, some houses do have teepees next to them. In the Southwest, some houses have hogans, and then they have a regular house. So traditionally, we had an Apache guy, remember Lakota? He had a teepee next, but he was Apache, he didn't live in a teepee, but you know, he had a teepee next to his house in Arizona. And this is a trading day. So all the traders come, all the Indians would come, and they would trade. Because once they go on the reservation, there's no more food. There's no way to get what you need unless you're trading for it, or you wait for your annuities, which are coming from the government. And the annuities would be goods, and it might be, they ended up being cheese, sugar, coffee, and pears and peaches. There is no wonder, if you know the history of the feeding of people on reservations, why so many Indians developed diabetes. It is not a mystery. And today, because of poverty, there are a lot of people who simply, and access, like you said, big bags. You know, the gasoline station. They had fried chicken and T-shirts and gasoline. But you can't get anything really healthy to eat in that joint. And so access and the fact that, and then the annuities wouldn't be given, and because the government was upset or whatever, or an agent would steal what was supposed to be going to the Indian folks, and so people starved. And so at the end of the 1800s and down into the beginnings of the 1900s, up until about the 30s or 40s, the population started to plummet. Tuberculosis was rampant, and starvation was rampant too. And this is part of that era okay, we'll go back to history a little later. What's the differences between those words, Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota? I've got this on your sheet, so you don't have to take notes. The scholars classify the tribes as Dakota, all of them, because they lived in the Dakota Territory. So all of them were Dakota. But really, there's three language groups: Dakota proper, which would be the easternmost Dakota, the ones who live in Minnesota still, and where most of the Plains Lakota came from, originally from Minnesota and Michigan, and originally maybe in the southeast, but they're not sure. But they came out onto the plains from there. So you have the Dakota, Nakota, and then Lakota, which is what the Brule are part of. And they're the westernmost group, and they're called the Teton or Teton Sioux. You might have seen that word, Teton. And here they are. They're called the Seven Council Fires of Chetishakolin, and they're over here. They're the Teton. Whoops, that's not the laser. The Teton woman. And so of that group, we're seeing our group at Rosebud, Sichangu, but there's also Minikonishu, Papa, this is the group of Sitting Bull. Oglala, this is the group of Crazy Horse. Itazipcho, Sihasapa, and Ohenumpa. I have their other names on your sheet. So there was an organization to these people. They didn't all live together. They kind of wandered around, and then they came together once a year to talk, to figure out, to get mates, to marry out of their family group, to find girlfriends and boyfriends and things like that. And so I'm sure the young people look forward to that. It was a summer encampment, and they would come together and solve all the problems with the group. Okay. How did the Army move Lakota to reservations? How and why did the U.S. continue to take lands? Okay, in the Fort Laramie Treaty, one of the first ones, and this happened actually before that Grattan affair, but there was already this push by the Army to want to put forts out there. No, they give up the right to certain things, but they do not abandon or prejudice any rights or claims they may have to other lands, and that they do not surrender the privilege of hunting, fishing, or passing over any of the tracts of country described before. meaning they may have to stay in a place, but that doesn't mean that they can't go hunting in Nebraska and Wyoming and wherever it was where there was traditional hunting. We call these reserved rights, and they were at the core of the fishing controversy in Wisconsin in the 70s and 80s that some of you may remember. And that was because the Ojibwe up there had the reserved right to hunt and fish from treaties. It wasn't something they were taking. This was a reserved right of their treaties, and they were exercising that right. They hadn't before. They started exercising their rights. But again, the 70s, remember, civil rights and American Indian movement becomes strong, and rights of all people, and of course the black civil rights movement. Okay, here's the other thing that was really very hard for the nations. Indian nations have to pick principals or head chiefs for their nations, who will conduct all national business. And Indian nations have to promise to support these chiefs and successors during good behavior. Okay, that was never the way it was done. There was never one big head chief. Each one of these little oyate or these Teton groups had a chief. That chief, they actually had two. One was war, one was peace. But that person served at the will of the people directly. If that person wasn't doing their job, the people just said you were no longer the chief. You have to wait for elections. Everybody just picked up, or they threw them out, or whatever. Today on Rosebud, we have the same thing going on. The president was just kicked out. A new president was elevated. The old president is making all kinds of noises, and then there's a tribal council, and they kicked him off. And one of the legacies of this treaty time is that this idea of having one chief is still a problem on reservations in the hearts and minds of the people. It would be like, we have a democracy. Okay, no. Now here's how we're going to do it. Well, you and I would still want our democracy back, and we would fight for it. And that's sort of the way. They liked it better when they'd sit around and talk about things to death. But it had to be consensus. You just couldn't have majority. You couldn't do it 5-4 like they did today. You had to have a consensus. And so to impose this system, the English did this to the Indians too, on the Indian subcontinent to a great extent. They put this bureaucratic thing over. And so this was the land that was in 1851 said, oh, you guys can have this land. This is you. This includes the Black Hills, and this includes down into Nebraska and over into Wyoming. So you guys it wasn't like, here are the exact lines, but you guys stay there in that kind of general area. The Cheyenne, you guys stay here. The Rickland, you guys stay here. Stop fighting each other. And so this was the Sioux Treaty lands and surrounding area in 1851. Then in 1868 they came back and said, whoa, wait a minute. Now all of a sudden you can't go to Nebraska, you can't go up here, you can't go over there. Here's what we think that it should be now. And this was a very controversial treaty, and it is important today because it is the basis for the Sioux tribes to get the Black Hills back as their land that was stolen from them. And this map just shows you that in 1868, the purple line is where the tribes, the Sioux tribes now should stay. And then the lines that go those were lost in 1877, and the other ones were lost in 1889, and another was lost in 1910. And so now you see why the current tribal reservations are so scattered. Because originally they would have been a lot closer to each other.
What was on that land that sort of made it desirable?
I think people were starting to immigrate, were starting to ranch and farm, and people were moving into the land, and also gold pretty soon. Not at this point, not in 1868, but gold in the Black Hills just like makes that massive run. The treaty said that that 3/4 of the adult males of all the Sioux had to sign. They didn't get that. They didn't get close to that. And so, according to that, the Indians have sued, and we'll get into that a little bit. So let's get to the goal. Oh, why do I have Spotted Tail there? Oh, Spotted Tail. I just wanted to show you Spotted Tail because you'll see his name. There's a Spotted Tail Children's Home. Sintagleshka University is the Lakota name for Spotted Tail.
Why is it called Spotted Tail?
Some trader gave him, you know the story, some trader gave him a raccoon tail that was kind of spotted, and he incorporated it into his regalia, and from then on, Indians changed their names a lot, depending, like, a crazy horse was called Curly when he was little because he had curly hair. And then he was called another name, and then he got the name Crazy Horse. So names changed. I don't think Spotted Tails, getting to be an adult, they don't change as much, but going through childhood, sometimes they changed a lot, you know. Okay, so Spotted Tail. So I just wanted to let you know that Spotted Tail signed the Fort Laramie Treaty in 1868. He also was present at that massacre I was talking about of the soldiers in 1855. The Army then came and killed some of the Lakotas, and then, so Spotted Tail and 2 other guys said, look, we'll give ourselves up. We'll say that we're the ones that did it. And they sent the 3 of them to Fort Leavenworth for a year, and then they let them go, and then they pardoned them. But when Spotted Tail came back, this would be about 1857, 1858, he knew that there were too many white people. He had seen it. He knew in his heart that they weren't going to be able to fight because he'd seen it. And that happens in other tribes across the country. There were some Apaches that were sent to Alcatraz. When they came back, they said, oh, you guys, no, it's never going to work. But, you know, that didn't stop Geronimo. And in 1879, he enrolls his kids in the first boarding school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And it goes later and drags him out of there because he goes out there and he's really mad because they've changed their names. They've made them Episcopalians. They haven't taught him any English, and something else he didn't like. He just said, forget about it. You know, I went along with this. You were going to educate my kids so that they would be part of this big wave of white people that were coming in, and that I know is going to take over. But he didn't like it. Okay, now we got George Armstrong Custer before he gets slaughtered. 2 years before he gets slaughtered. He's supposed to go scout out the Black Hills. It's a sacred territory for most of the Sioux. They find gold. The miners start pouring in. The Sioux complain to the government, this is our land, you can't, it doesn't work. The government says, we'll give you $5 million for it. We'll give you $5 million. Well, they don't take it. Okay, they don't take it at that point. So then the government, that was in like the next year, so 1875. Then the government says, okay, if you're not going to sell us the Black Hills, you all now really have to come and live on reservations. You really have to report. You have to become part of the list of people in the reservations. And as of January 1st, 1876, if you're not here, you're hostile. You're hostile. You're considered hostile. So Red Cloud comes in. He had been warring with the army, but he finally gives up. Spotted Tail comes in, but Sitting Bull doesn't, Crazy Horse doesn't, and a number of other people don't. And they move off to Wyoming, hoping that nobody will come find them there. They'll just hunt and the white men aren't here, blah, 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 so we'll just stay here. But then they begin to hunt them down. And so another thing happens in 1864, excuse me. The people in Colorado are hunting down Cheyennes, and the people in Nebraska are hunting down Arikara. So all of a sudden, the Sioux with the Cheyenne and the Arikara come together. And they say, come on, enough is enough. And they begin making war during that time. Little by little, everybody comes in, but Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. And then Crazy Horse is convinced that he should come in as well. Comes in 1877. But in the meantime, the Battle of the Little Bighorn, I think I have that here. Yeah. The Battle of the Little Bighorn took place in June of 1876. These are pictures. This is down here, Custer's monument, supposedly. What's happened in recent years at Little Bighorn is the whole story is being told. So now these are headstones for Indians who they know died there. Most of the Indians picked up their bodies and took them away. So there were some. And then this is a beautiful wrought iron sculpture. And then on the walls is the story, and I think I've got a picture next. Yeah. It's got a hide painting where it's an Indian version of the Little Bighorn. And now they tell the story from both the Army point of view and the Indian point of view, based on what the oral histories that they gathered. Okay. Now Spotted Tail goes all the way over into Nebraska, where Chris and I were just a couple of years ago, on a ranch. There's a rancher there, but the Camp Sheridan was there, and Spotted Tail just brings his people all the way over. It's way away from Red Cloud. It's way away from where Crazy Horse is, although Crazy Horse runs to get protection from Spotted Tail. Spotted Tail convinces him, look, I'm going to take you back into the fort. We'll just talk about it. It'll be okay. But Crazy Horse gets killed when he takes him back to the fort. So Spotted Tail comes back, and he goes, holy cow. He moves his people up into South Dakota, where eventually they end up in Rosebud. But he's trying to protect them all the time, and that's why he's so revered on that reservation. Okay, so here again, where is what's the Cheyenne River Agency? Let's see that. Standing Rock and Cheyenne River. Okay. So here is the Rosebud Agency, which is basic. This is by 1876. So this is basically where you're going, and it's pretty well established by that. Before that, like we said, in 1868, it was like that. And then you'll notice that, again, we talked about this, that chunks of land between here were taken away, so that Rosebud and Pine Ridge were together in 1889, but then there was another bunch of land that cut these two reservations off from each other. Okay, these are the Black Hills from the air, and the Lakota consider this the place, the heart of all that is. So did the Cheyenne. There's a lot of tribes who consider this land sacred. And so, remember, they refused that $5 million for the Black Hills. So, the Sioux go to court in 1979. I'm going to read this because I'm really not good at legal stuff. But in 1979, they go to court, the Court of Claims. And they said that there was an 1877 act. After the Little Bighorn, the government said, you know what, we're just going to take the Black Hills. And we passed this agreement. It's an act. And everybody takes the government's word for it. In 1979, the Supreme Court, the government, award the Sioux $17.5 million with 5% interest totaling $105 million for the illegal seizure of the Black Hills. There was a Supreme Court case then arguing about that. And in June of 1980, the Supreme Court ruled 8-1 majority to uphold that Court of Claims ruling, awarding the Sioux $106 million, the largest sum ever given to an Indian tribe for illegally seized land. In July of that same year, the Sioux Tribal Council refused to accept that $106 million. We don't want your money, we want our land. And that's their position, still, to this day. So, by 2010, the original award has grown from $105 million to 1 billion, 44 million. So now it's 1 billion, 44 million. A young kid who was asking me about this said, well, where does that money come from? I don't know. They figure it out. In 2012, a UN special reporter, a rapporteur, they say it in French, conducted a 12-day tour of native land to determine how the U.S. was faring on the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Rights. And his name was Mr. Anaya, James Anaya, tentatively recommended the return of lands to some tribes, including the Black Hills to the Sioux. So here we are. There are still to be decided an incredible amount of money to be decided. Now, last year, an interesting thing happened though. An individual owner of land in the Black Hills, had been there for generations, decided to sell a piece of land. It was sacred to the Lakota. This family had let the Lakota come do their ceremonies and everything, never any problem, but now they were worried because what if it's a condo developer? I mean, who knows what? So they went on, it wasn't like Kickstarter, but it was something like that. And they went on and they got the $1 million they needed by people all over the country, $5, $10 to buy that land. So now they have that land in the middle of the Black Hills. So they got a piece of it for $1 million. Anyway, I think these are extras, yeah. Okay. One of the questions was, why have many Lakota chosen to join the armed forces? Anybody got an idea of why so many Indians would join? Because they do. They join the Army in huge numbers, more than any other group.
They need to get out the reservation.
The benefits and to see the world and education, right.
Is it also because they think that the Army is the one that cheated them out, so if they think that they're part of the Army, it won't happen again?
Possibly. It's possible. There's a lot of reasons. There's a warrior tradition. And how do you be a warrior except by joining the armed forces? And so there's a lot of reasons. There's an article about it that I reference on your sheet if you're interested in the answer to that question, because it's a really interesting thing. Here's some statistics. 25% of male Indians, despite not being citizens, were in World War I. 25% of the males of the Indian population. 44,000 World War II, greater per capita rate than any other ethnic group. 10 to 15,000 in Korea, 50,000 plus in Vietnam. 90% of them are volunteers in Vietnam. 3,000 in the Gulf War and Iraq, Afghanistan. You may know that the first female soldier killed in Iraq was Gloria Pieshtawa, who was a Hopi Indian. So she was the first woman killed there. Anyways, it's a good article if you're interested in that question. The main tenets of Lakota religion traditions. Okay, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I am not in a position to talk about this except by experiencing it myself, and I have. But I am not a Lakota. I've been gifted with experiences that I feel are pretty deep for me, and another worldview for me, and I don't know according to the Tree of Life, you could be invited to a sweat lodge. That's about the only ceremony that I saw. Okay, so if you're interested in the ceremonies, these are them, and there's some stuff that you could look up. But if you are invited to the first one, the inipi, the rite of purification, it is a ceremony that is done before you do any other ceremony. It is purifying your body and your soul, and you are attempting to get in touch with the earth and nature, fire, air, water, so that you are whole and you are open to the good things that can happen to you after, whatever it is that you're deciding to do. It is, my first one was there. It scared me. I will admit, it scared me. So I left after a couple of rounds, but they said, don't leave. Just stay outside and listen to the singing. And it was powerful. It was very powerful. It's dark in there. It's steamy. It's like a sauna on steroids. But it is real sacred. And the singing is in Lakota. And there's 4 doors, and there's just a whole ritual to it, and you invite spirits in, and then you pray, and then you pray for other people, and it's a really interesting thing. So if you're invited and you want to do that, please go ahead and do that. Crying for a Vision is a vision quest. You've heard of that, any of you? Where young men, usually it was young men, would go on to, would be at the time of their teenage years, about your guys' ages, would go be taken out first. They would do an inipi, a sweat lodge, and then they would be taken out and put out alone for 1 to 4 days with no food or water, and they would pray. They'd have a pipe. The pipe is also very sacred to Lakota. They would pray. They would ask for a vision. They would lay down and go to sleep. They would wake up again and come back down after the allotted time. The medicine people would come get them, and then they would put them in another sweat lodge, and then they would say, what did you see, or what happened to you? And then from that, in the old days, a life path might be chosen for you, depending on the animals, depending on your dreams, depending on whatever. Sometimes nothing. Sometimes nothing. And you wouldn't have to do it again. The Sundance is a yearly event, and it is sacrificing. The people who Sundance sacrifice themselves for the good of the people. The other ones are not practiced so much anymore, except keeping of the soul, and that's something that happens if someone dies. Someone else keeps the soul, and there are various things you need to do during that year after the person has died in order to honor them, and then release that soul after a year. Okay. When native religions were made illegal, how did people keep the culture and faith alive? Were those laws actively enforced? Well, okay, so in 1882, in 1883, the government basically said, you cannot practice your religion anymore. All this has got to stop. This is just going to make people more savage, etc. So, did it go away? No. It went underground. And it wasn't until, and in 1890, the massacre at Wounded Knee occurs in part due to the suppression of the ceremonies, in this case the ghost dance. That was to bring the buffalo back, to bring the dead relatives back. Things that we may not understand, but were really powerful for the people. And it wasn't until 1978 that American Indian Religious Freedom Act said it's okay now. You can do it. On Rosebud, they told me that it was the women who kept the religion alive. They would go out and they'd bring the men, they'd kick them in the butt and say, come on, we're going to lose this. I want my children to have their ceremonies and their things. And so they really do say that the women were the keepers of the traditions. Now, did they go to jail? Well, once in a while. But here's what they did. They withhold food with rations for people who are suspected of holding the ceremonies. Some people were jailed, not very often. Children were taken from their parents and sent to those boarding schools. Really, really belligerent people were sent to the Indian insane asylum in Camp in South Dakota. Albert Whitehead, who was probably the most balanced person I know between two cultures, said to me, he was raised traditionally, only spoke Lakota until he was 16. Then they sent him to St. Francis School, which is a mission. You'll see St. Francis School. And then he was told, you can't speak your language, blah, 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 blah. And he hated it, and he hated what had happened to him. He said the missionaries scared him by saying, if your traditional relatives don't stop doing what they're doing, they're going to hell when they die. So he always thought that, well, he was always like, I like this, I shouldn't do this, they're going to hell. So he got caught, between the two. So I met a woman there, she's passed, Edna Little Elk. I think she was 85 when I met her. And I think I got her quote. I did. Go out and seek the weapons of the white man, cultivate that arsenal, and use it to empower your people. She was about this tall. She was trying to teach me how to use a knife to take the meat and make it thin enough to put it over a rack to dry it into jerky. And so I was doing it, and she kept saying, I go, that's not good, right? And she goes, and somebody said, it means no, don't do, you're not doing it right. Anyways, and she showed us how to make a traditional jerky, berries, and buffalo fat, I think. Like, it'd be like gork, it'd be like granola that they would, but anyway, and she's the TV lady too. Anyway, what she did, there was a missile silo place a little bit north. Do you know where it was? Where was it? They had missiles. And she and a number of women got up on those missiles, and wouldn't leave. And would not leave until they did. And she said, and then she didn't go, and she said, and they're gone. So she thought magically the lady's getting up there. But she was, an older woman when she did that too. So she was I saw a lot of strength in women on Rosebud. I really did. That they were pulling together their families a lot. How has life on the reservation changed? Remained the same. Okay, well, these are all the things that the government did. First, they did the treaty period. Okay, here's your reservation. We'll give you some food. We'll give you teachers. You're going to be farmers on Rosebud. The problem is, and in Pine Ridge too, the land isn't arable. Now, they started them out with cattle, and that would have worked. Then, for some reason, they took the cattle away and said, no, they're going to be farmers. But it doesn't work in that part of South Dakota. There may be other parts, but in that part. Why did they put them there? The language, because the land was what do you think?
Because it was the worst thing ever.
Yeah, nobody wanted that. That's why they were put there. It wasn't because it was a good place for Indians to be. Then there was the assimilation allotment boarding school. So, okay, the government came and said, now we're going to cut up the reservations, and you're going to own your piece, and you're going to own your piece, and you're going to own your piece. And all your children need to go to school, and they need to start being white kids. And that's what happened from 1879 to 1934. And what happened during that time was the disintegration of the culture, and the disintegration of parental relationships, and the disintegration of that grandfather to child to grandchild. It was all disintegrated in that time period. In 1934, well, just after a report from the government said that Indians are dying at an alarming rate, it's terrible out on those reservations, oh my God, we've got to do something. They said, well, you know what? You guys can organize yourself the way you want to again. Let's try that. Well, how is that going to work when everybody's disintegrated? There's no really basis for that. Folks tried, you know, but what they were doing was mimicking now all of the organizations that they had been involved with, the way they were set up, you know, not really, wasn't an organic way of, okay, let's reassert who we are as people and how we used to operate. And so, and then by 58, the government was starting to get tired of taking care of Indians, is what they said. So termination, relocation. Well, this tribe's no longer a tribe. And then come to Chicago, come to Cleveland, come to LA. We'll put you in an apartment, we'll get you jobs, we'll blah, 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 blah. Well, what happened was, here, they all went uptown. They couldn't get any jobs. That's why there were so many Indians there for so long. They couldn't get any jobs worth money for. Many drifted back to the reservations. And there's a whole lot of different things depending on the tribe there. And so now we're back to self-determination. But this is different because the younger people, like a little bit older than you, but probably in your age, are now becoming lawyers and doctors and things like that. There is a regrowth on the reservations. It's slow going. It is very slow going, but it is there. We met two doctors who have this Black Hills Health Cooperative in Rapid City. We actually met at the Green Mill listening to jazz, but and they're trying to do the preventive work about diet and exercise and things. So I noticed that they said, well, you can have Indian food, you can have Indian tacos, and these people say, that isn't Indian food. That's government surplus food made with flour, and it's terrible for you. And so they're trying to change the idea that that is an Indian way to eat. I love this quote. Why do people continue to live on reservations? I've never had an answer for this. My friends here ask me, why do you want to go back there? It's so depressed. It's so poor. But unless you go back and do something, it will stay like that forever. A lot of people only see the poverty, which you will. But there's so much more there and so many good people. I love it there. It's home. Okay? And it's home because this is Bear Butte, and it's very sacred. And we have climbed it. And it is a place where people go crying for those visions. It's a place where sweat lodges are done. It's a place where Crazy Horse Neil was born. On the way up to the top, you'll see all kinds of offerings. Those are tobacco and different kinds of colors of cloth. And they're offerings for various things that people give as they climb that mountain. This is Wind Cave. This is the entrance to Wind Cave, the original entrance, and this is where the Lakota think that they came from. It's their origin place, so they don't want to leave there. This is Harney Peak. This is where Black Elk went for his vision. He went and had his vision on the top of Harney Peak. This is all in the Black Hills, by the way. This, though, is in Wyoming. This is Devil's Tower. This is Poison County, the third time. We saw that. In June of every year, though, climbing and all that is, it's not forbidden. It's not recommended due to traditional ceremonies that take place at this place in June. And to be perfectly honest, I was there just at the end of June, and there was nobody climbing and nobody doing it, but they were getting ready for July 1st. And they were going to climb after that. But if you walk around it at certain points, you'll see Indians smoking pipes in a circle. You'll see them doing all kinds of things on Devil's Tower is what we call it. Anything Indian is Devil's. Okay.
Barbara, can I ask,
Yeah.
how close are they to Devil's Tower?
Oh, they're not that close.
I didn't think
No,
so.
they're not that close. What effect did boarding schools Christian missionaries have? How did they continue? Okay. There's good people who are Christian missionaries. There always have been. But there was that group that came out there, and it was not just the Indians, but anybody who wasn't Christian was just, we're going to beat it out of you. You know, you're going to be a Christian. And abusive people at mission schools and things like that. So the people, older people, have this long history of distrust of social workers, missionaries. They were the older ones that were ripped from their families by these people and sent away. So you have to remember that. It doesn't mean that that's the attitude that all people will have, but this was a quote I thought. I was made to burn and destroy all my tribal carvings, eagle feathers, and my dance outfit because the parents told me that I was a Christian. Old things passed away and all things became new, which meant all my native cultural ways needed to be replaced with Euro-American cultural ways. Then I was told I could no longer participate in our native gatherings, dances, or ceremonies because they were of the devil and full of idolatry. They even told me my native drum was an idol and full of spirits, so I burned it and learned the guitar instead. Now I'm no longer a native in my culture. I'm an anglicized Christian in American culture. The Bible has been used to colonize my soul. This is kind of recent. This isn't way back. So you may run into all different kinds. When I was at the powwow, a missionary group came in their vans, and everybody got out to go to the powwow. And there were people who moved down the benches and were very welcoming. And there were people over here who goes, here comes the, I don't know, they had a name. And it wasn't, and I said, what is that? And they go, they'll come, they dip in, they dip out, and they never do anything for us, but they feel better. And then if you get them started on anthros and psychos, which are psychologists and sociologists and stuff like that. But with a good reason. This is Spotted Tail with his children. When he went and found out that they didn't know English and they had been there for a while, so he took them out of there. That was an interesting picture. And we're back to Albert Whitehead. I don't know if... and this is what Tree of Life says. And that's why I think they're great. One common feeling among the Sioux we voice that the whites always know the right thing to do, especially when telling someone else what to do. So that we do not present ourselves in this manner, we strive to respect the wisdom, common sense, traditional values, and sovereignty of the people we serve. This is vital to the idea of cooperative effort. A great relationship has been developed between tribal leaders and Tree of Life based on a goal of working beside them, not in front of them. We offer our services, seeking guidance and accountability through the appropriate tribal agencies. We openly report what we do and share tools and services. By working as an official resource of the tribe, the next generation has come to see the Christian church in a positive manner, which is terrific. And I think it's a wonderful statement. One of the good things, there's relief agencies, Sintiglaska University, which became a university because they offer a master's in teaching, and I think that they supply most of the teachers that would go to the reservation, and they all get jobs, I think. So it's been a really good thing. It was Sintiglaska College for a while. There's new educational models, but I'm always noticing that a new school will start, and then next year I'll go back and say, well, how's the new school in Rosebud? And it's gone. You know, and then, but now they're up in arms because one of the states or school districts kicked a guy off because he was introducing too much culture in the school. So I don't know what that means. I mean, the guy might have been crazy, you know, and I don't want any English or something. He might have been one of those guys, you know. I don't know, but they've got this thing going with education that's still not resolved. So prevention and medical programs are bigger, and Lakota language is getting stronger. More people are learning it. There are materials to teach young children. So I haven't been there, though, for 15 years, so you know, I don't really know. I have learned about these things through other people who have gone back. You know, I was giving money to Grass Mountain School, and then it was gone, you know, so I don't really know. So what are the biggest difficulties? Well, historical trauma is what the psychologists who are native say is the biggest trauma, is the biggest problem, which means that the legacy of the boarding schools and a lot of abuse, the U.S. trust relationship with tribes, which never allowed tribes to be independent. They're always being treated like children. after so many generations, who starts? We talk about this with social welfare a lot, right? Well, this is what was set up to do to Indians, to keep them dependent on the government. It wasn't their problem, it was ours as a government. And gaining real sovereignty, meaning we want to be able to use the money that is ours and not have it go through you anymore. And that's a big general way of saying it. The sovereignty guaranteed in treaties. Gangs, meth, drugs, domestic violence, suicide, all of those are outgrowths of that historical trauma, according to psychologists. Rosebud does have an issue with wild dogs, and it's a big issue. I don't think you'll have any problem, but they'll go. I mean, they have had a couple of really vicious attacks in the last year. But I'm sure that people will know about that if it's in your area. But yeah, all of the things that come when people don't have jobs. There's no jobs. Yeah.
I think because we don't have reservations here, I don't really understand the sovereign nation. Are people that live on a reservation considered a different nation? Are they still able to vote, or
That's
are they able to go to like
that's a
community
really
colleges?
a really good question.
What can they do, and like what's like not in the same pot? Like,
Okay,
do they pay
it
taxes
depends on treaties.
Mm-hmm.
In treaties with certain nations. With these nations, they are a nation, an independent nation, but they are domestically dependent on the United States government. Okay, that means they do vote, they do pay taxes off the reservation. The money that they get, which is spread equally among the members of the community, is the payment for the lands they gave up. It's not extra money. It's the rent, basically. And for giving up certain things, the government said, we will pay you X, Y, Z. There are certain educational benefits, because the treaties say you need to educate our kids. There are certain health things. Depends on treaty. It depends on the treaty. But since these are the later treaties, they have more education, health, and things like that. Gambling revenues. Rosebud has a casino down by Valentine where the tubing is. But it is in the middle of nowhere. And it doesn't, location for real estate and casinos. It's got to be where people come in droves. I think they employ 8 or 10 people, and there's cars around it, but that could have changed. I mean, it might be bigger now, okay? So if you go by it, just let me know. I was wondering about that. But the biggest revenues don't go to the tribes from that, and it has to be a lot of money too. Like the one in Connecticut, it's huge, and it has a small tribe, and they've got hospitals and schools and stuff because of the money that they're making in that giant casino there. But the ones in Milwaukee are pretty good. The Ho-Chunk is pretty good. So we don't. So it depends on the treaty. But sovereign means when they were signed. That's why the government stopped making them in 1879. That it says this in the Constitution. It says that in Article 1, Section 8, I think it is, don't quote me, and it says that this is except Indian nations, and the Indian nations are separate, and they are other nations. Okay, they just were over the years with the Marshalls. There's some things that happened in the 1800s. Those were really to get rid of the Cherokees, but they impact all Indians. And said, no, yeah, but we have a trust relationship with these poor people. They're infants and they can't take care of themselves. So everything's got to go through the government. And it was set up in this trust relationship. Now, the biggest settlement for abuse of the trust was just settled. And it was billions of dollars. And it went to a lot of people. Because when the Indians sued for the records, they were eaten by rats in some cellar in New Mexico. Nobody knew where the money was. Being in the Indian business was lucrative throughout history. And that is why we also have the problems that we have. But they do vote, and they do pay taxes off the reservation. But if you go on a reservation, like the gas doesn't have the state tax and, things like that, because their sovereignty has to do with that. Okay, I think that probably. You know what? What should you ask, what not? Well, I'll tell you what, if you have a good heart and you really are curious, you can ask whatever you want. People won't answer your questions. Indian folks traditionally are really kind of quiet when they first meet people. Generally. There are some that aren't like that, obviously just like us. They're generally quiet. But once you get them talking, they're hilarious. They make fun of everything. They are people who have learned that the only thing I can do is laugh, I think, from all the trauma and stuff like that. I don't know. So, there's all kinds of programs that I'm not sure about Rosebud's particularly, but, and then there's jokes on the reservation. If you want medical care, don't get sick after June because the funds run out at the Indian Health Service. So anyway, that's it. Any other questions? That was a great question you asked, by the way. Thank you.
Just a quick one. I noticed there are a lot of sevens, like 7 nations and 7 councils and 7 rituals.
Yeah, there are.
Is that just how it happened?
I think it's an important number. I don't know why it is though. 4 is an important number, but I know that the 4 wins and the 4 points of but yeah.
Robert, do you think the kids making an effort to say hello in the Lakota language? Is that appreciated or so not like?
I don't think it matters. I really don't. I learned the Lakota language in Chicago for a couple of years, and so, but I couldn't speak it. Just like every other language, you can learn how to read and write it, but speaking it is not. And I tried it out, and they laughed at me. They went, no, they wouldn't go. They laugh and cover their mouths for some reason. And I guess that's, traditionally about it. And I go, that was wrong. That's really cute. Actually, they didn't teach me some words, but I learned it here, from, it was from Cambridge. The other place out there, Wounded Knee, which is kind of a drive, is worth going to. I don't know if they'll be able to tell you that, but that was the last big massacre of Indians, and it's a very sacred ground for the people out there, and it's really well worth visiting too. Anything else?
Yeah.
Is there any questions or anything you're worried about or anything?
I think you will be just fine. People will be appreciative, but I think it's true. You're going to see a lot of things that look like poverty to you, and just you need to look at the people and be around the people, even if you're not talking. Just be aware of the people, and the kids will come up to you. The kids will. Yeah.
My other son went on a similar experience last year, and some of the kids brought gifts, just like gum and things like that. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
That's clear, right?
That's probably a good question to ask them. Yeah. Because you really aren't going to get gluten-free vegan mothers out there. Their kids are sucking on red popsicles and, eat bologna. And I ate bologna on white bread with mustard for Sunday or lunch. I happen to like bologna on white bread with mustard. I don't think you have anything to worry about. Just wake up and say, say to yourself, I am going to learn something today. And I'm going to keep my eyes and my heart open to learn.
Thank you so much, Barbara. So much.
Our next activity, parents, you're dismissed. See you at midnight. Youth, our next activity is going to take place in the kitchen, but I'm going to have you stay here for a minute so we can talk about it first. Okay? And Barbara, thank you again. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Huh?